Hey there, good morning. Welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph, and I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock music. Okay, today I started out doing something I had been looking forward to add to my musical top tens, but halfway through it, I discovered I had far more people on this list than a top 10 was going to be able to handle. So I decided to put this in my top 25 lists. So now I have my top 25, and this is on Vocalist. So my top 25 vocalists in the rock music genre. This was difficult because there was a lot of people. I had by the time I had put this list together, I had about 70 people on this list, and the bottom half wasn't too difficult, like the bottom half to knock off. That wasn't too difficult. It started getting more difficult as I got close to the cutoff line. And so what I did is I decided I'd do the top 10, top 12, I guess, are pretty much most of them, yeah, based on what I can see here, most of them have been in that list for decades. With the exception of one notable artist who I actually had a problem deciding whether to put them on this list or not. But I'll get to that when I get to the person. The bottom 15 or bottom 12 or 13, I moved around quite a bit. Some of them were on the list, went off, come back on the list, were off again. A few people I changed at the last minute just because I had a change of heart. And when I'm done doing the top 25, I will also give you an honorable mention, and I think looks like there's about 13 or 14 of them as well, of which some of them could have easily been on this list. But anyways, we're here to do the top 25 vocalists in the rock genre. And I'll do it the normal way I do it, which is I go from the 25th to number 1. And I just want to preference before we start that these are not necessarily the best vocalists in the rock music genre, because obviously I haven't listened to all of the vocalists in the rock genre. There's a lot of people out there I know are good that I just haven't had the chance to get to. A lot of stuff I've been exploring, a lot of different music in the last 2 or 3 months, and there's a lot of stuff I haven't got a chance to explore because you can only really listen to so much music on a given day. I usually do my playlist every day. I play some of that, and then at the night before I go to bed, I'll put an album on to listen to before I go to bed, and that's usually something that's been recommended by another site or whatever, or something I've heard about that I've wanted to listen to. And then sometimes the stuff I bought, I will play one of them during the day to get a kind of feel for it, and I put it in where I'm going to put it into my playlist, which is the thing I listen to the most. And I kind of do a lot of videos and stuff like that too. So there's a lot of stuff involved to listening to a lot of really good music. But it's all great. I love it. I've never loved doing something more than I'm loving this. And I really enjoyed doing this particular video because there's so many great vocalists in rock genre that I've always wanted to give some kind of attention to. And this was my chance, and I saved this one for last because it was the meaningful one for me. So we're going to start now with the top 25. And please, again, these are just my picks. They're my favorites. That doesn't mean they're the best. And if you have your favorite picks, you put them in the list. I'd love to hear what yours are too. There might be one or two in there that I don't even know about that I thought, maybe I should give this person a listen to. Okay, we'll start with my number 25. Goes back to my very beginning of my rock music adventure, as I want to call it. And this guy was probably my first rock genre vocalist that I really liked a lot. And that is Freddy Turner, or C.F. Turner, or whatever you want to call him, from Bachman Turner Overdrive. I really dig that gravelly voice he has. It's really raw, and especially with the heavy guitars that and heavy riffs that they do in BTO, it just he's the perfect vocalist for that group. It's very hard and very heavy stuff, and his voice just suits it perfectly. Not that Randy Bachman isn't bad; he's a good vocalist, but I just think C.F. Turner is just perfect for the band. So I wanted to give him a list, and he made the list. He beat out a couple of notable people to get on this list too. And I had to back and forth for a bit there, but I just wanted CF on here. I just think he deserves to be here. Okay, number 24, we're moving up. Number 24 comes from the next favorite band that I ever had, and for a long time this guy was my favorite vocalist. I love his voice, even some of the disco-y stuff that they kind of did for a bit. I just think he has one of those voices that's just outstanding. It's, you can hear the kind of accent in his voice, but at the same time, it's just very operatic voice. And, he's lost it in recent years, but early on, he was one of the best, I think. And we're talking about Paul Stanley of Kiss. I love this guy's voice. I think he, for the longest time, was probably my favorite vocalist in the band. He's faded over the years, but that's because I don't really listen to them as much as I used to, and his voice is not held up as well as some other rock genre type vocalists, but definitely deserves to be on this list. Paul Stanley. Number 23, him and Stanley, I was, just before I put their names down, I was thinking about it and flipped them around a bit, and I just decided that based on the kind of, I actually won a contest singing a karaoke song with one of his songs, and that kind of was this deciding factor. I thought, I really like this guy's voice, and he's been with the band their career, and his voice is still pretty good. And we're talking about Robin Zander of Cheap Trick. Just has one of those voices that I actually do him pretty good too, which is nice. Anyway, so Robin Zander of Cheap Trick, number 23. Number 22 is by many people considered to be, if not the best rock vocalist of all time, certainly in the top 3 or 4 or 5. He's not my favorite vocalist. I enjoy him quite a bit. The music I like quite a bit too, but it's not as predominant as it was with me when I was younger. It's kind of faded over time, and I still like their music quite a bit, but his voice, I don't know how many octaves he has in his vocal range, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 6. The guy's amazing. We're talking about Freddie Mercury of Queen. Very few people have the kind of octave range that he has. The guy is just amazing. He could have been an opera singer easily. And I tend to like operatic voices, I noticed, because there's several guys on this list that could easily have made that, Anyway, so Freddie Mercury comes in at number 22. Number 21, I liked him as a solo artist quite a bit. I bought the big album that he had, and I really dug his voice quite a bit. And then he joined a band that I love a lot, and it really surprised me because I didn't think he would fit in, but he's fit in perfectly. I think he has a vocal range and sound. He can make sounds of other people's voices that I think are just really surprises me how good he is. And we're talking about Lawrence Gowen, keyboardist and vocalist for Styx. So anyways, I like him quite a bit. Number 21, Lawrence Gowen. Number 20 is a guy who I think has a tremendous vocal sound to his... I never always liked all of his music. I like some of his solo albums, but not all of them. He's very poppy. Originally, he was part of one of my group of 7, and he took over from a legendary vocalist, and he didn't bat an eyelash. He was as good as that guy, I think. A little bit different sound, but handled all of those hard songs fairly easily, in my opinion. And the guy is just a great vocalist. I mean, what you think of him as a person or don't think of him as a person is irrelevant here. I mean, great vocalist. We're talking about drummer and vocalist for Genesis, Phil Collins. And, I mean, the guy was maybe the number 1 pop artist in the 80s, between the Genesis stuff and his own solo stuff and some of the stuff he did for Disney. Great guy. Phil Lynott is number 19. Thin Lizzy, longtime legend and vocalist. perfect voice for that group. Very different sounding, in my opinion, than a lot of your vocalists out there, and one of the very beginning sounding heavy metal type singers. I don't think I don't think of Thin Lizzy as a heavy metal band, but they did have some pretty heavy riffs in there, and his voice suited that music perfectly. Number 18, a vocalist who I bought 2 or 3 of the albums when they first came out, around well, not when they first came out, but around the same time period. The main one was was the album that I liked quite a bit, and had every track on the album I liked, and her voice, I think, is just different enough and special enough that it really was the thing that captured me for the group. And we're talking about Chrissy Hind of the Pretenders. I think she's an underrated vocalist and should get more attention than she does. She never gets on these lists, but she's on my list, and that's all that matters to me. Okay, number 17. This guy knocks the socks off of the genre he's in. One of the premier heavy metal vocalists, in my opinion, of all time. The guy's voice is unbelievably hard and strong. And he knocks the songs out of the park every time he sings. We're talking about, yes, Bruce Air Siren Dickerson. And that title suits him perfectly, you know. The Iron Maiden lead vocalist, you know, they've had a couple of other guys, but I don't think those other guys touch him. And I think very few heavy metal vocalists touch him. In fact, I don't think there's anybody on my list here who does heavy metal like him. So to me, he's number 17, Bruce Dickerson. Number 16 comes from a Canadian trio, power trio, and I know you're thinking where I'm going, but you're wrong. I'm thinking about the drummer and vocalist for Triumph, Gilmore. He sings 2 or 3 songs for them that are among my favorite rock songs of all time. His voice isn't fantastic, but it suits the songs he does. He has a very good bluesy type of voice, I think. I think he could have easily been a blues singer and would have fit right in. Really good vocalist, Gilmore. Number 15, legend. Not just as a vocalist, but as a frontman. Very charismatic, very dynamic, and perfect for the music he sang. He has that voice that's, I mean, his voice isn't great, but it suits the music so well. And he wrote most of the stuff too, so he's basically singing what he wrote, which is perfect. And we're talking about Bon Scott of AC/DC. To me, that was a tragedy. I think they could have made 3 or 4 really good albums after this with him singing. And nothing against Brian Johnson. I think he's a great vocalist, but I just don't think he's as good as Bon Scott. To me, that's how I feel about it. Number 14, longtime legendary singer. I don't think he has the greatest voice ever. I don't think he's the best rock vocalist ever. I don't even think he's the greatest frontman ever. But he, when put to the challenge to do certain things, this guy knocks it out of the park. He's entertaining as hell. I love his voice. He sings a lot of my favorite songs. Roger Daltrey. When they did that Tommy album, he put that album on the map with the way he portrayed that. He just took it on and did the job, man. Great. Roger Daltrey. Love him. Number 13, Canadian folk and rock singer, legend to me, has written like tons and tons of timeless classic songs, and I love that voice. You caught me knocking at the cellar door. Gotta love that. I mean, just a classic Neil Young voice, right? I just love him. So number 13 is Neil Young. Now we get into the top 12. And the top 12 for me have been primarily top 12 people for decades now. And I love them all. There's only one person on this top 12 list who wasn't in it in the last, like, more than 20 years ago. But that person, think I debated about putting them in, not because of their voice, which I love, but because of maybe they're a little more too poppy and maybe don't really fit into this, but I'm putting them in anyways because I love them. So number 12, vocalist for one of my favorite progressive rock bands, and his voice has not changed, in my view, since their very first album to now. He sounds the same. Great. He's just fantastic. He has such good harmony and such a nice, pleasant sounding voice that suits their music perfectly. We're talking about John Anderson of Yes. Great vocalist. Love him. The next guy also is a great vocalist, and I love him quite a bit too, but hardly is a soft sounder at all. This guy is the greatest screamer, in my opinion, in rock history. Nobody can do the things he does with his vocal screaming. And there are people that try, and it just sounds more like screeching to me. But this guy, he really nails it. And I'm talking about Ian Gillen of Deep Purple. But I first knew him from the Black Sabbath Born Again album. But I think he's one of the legendary vocalists. This guy can knock it out of the park every single time. Excuse me. So now we're moving into the top 10. The top 10, some of the lower ones have switched off with Gillen and Anderson over time, but they've been pretty much the same. I'm going to go back to one of my favorite bands who've already included a vocalist for, and that's Tommy Shaw. Tommy Shaw, I love his voice. His musical writing is great. His guitar playing is fantastic. His versatility in different types of instruments is great. His songwriting is fantastic. Some of the best songs ever written in rock, I think, were written by Tommy Shaw. But I really love his vocals. He's a guy, I have a repertoire of songs I love to sing in the shower. There's maybe anywhere between 30 and 50 songs that I sing a couple of them every time in the shower. He's always one of those guys, always has been since I first heard him. He just has one of those voices that's so I just love it. I don't know what to say about it. So Tommy Shaw for number 10. Number 9, a guy whose vocals I cannot do at all, and I try, and I've even made a couple of CDs when I used to go to the X, and I tried to do some of his songs, and he's a very difficult voice to get. He's not the greatest vocalist of all time, but his voice just suits the music and is so to me, so memorable and so recognizable almost immediately. I'm talking about Genesis frontman early on, Peter Gabriel. And again, another guy who's a great songwriter, a great lyricist, and very creative, great musical writer. Like just the guy, and a stage presence too. Fantastic singer, Peter Gabriel, number 9. Number 8, another fantastic stage presence, acrobatic, frontman, like just out there. Like when I say out there, I mean like he's kind of like a Steven Tyler, this guy, but more. I think he's a better singer than Steven Tyler. And he can do a lot of things different than you get. Like you wouldn't expect. You think he's just going to be like a hard rock singer and do the hard rock screeching and stuff and screaming and stuff like that, which he does very well. His screams are almost as good as Ian Gillen's. But he also has that kind of voice that can do that kind of bluesy, jazzy stuff too. And I really appreciate that in him more than his rock stuff. I just think the guy is... And he's a bit obnoxious too, which I actually think suits his character. And we're talking about David Lee Roth. Say what you want about him. I love his vocals. I think Van Halen was at the top of their game with him singing. And nothing against Sammy Hagar, who I don't mind, but he's not one of my favorite vocalists. But he can't carry David Lee Roth around at all to me. I think Roth is just a top 8 guy right today, right? Number 7 also comes from Triumph, Rick Emmett. This guy has a voice like an angel. I love his voice. He sings probably 2 or 3 of my top favorite songs as well. that group had a lot of really strong vocal support, and he can play guitar fantastic. He writes some great tunes. He just has one of those voices I love, very almost angelic, I think. So there you go, Rick Emmett, number 7. Number 6 is very different voice. He does a very folky voice. He can do a bluesy voice. He can do a hard rock voice. He can do a lot of things. I really like his voice quite a bit, and I try to mimic it a lot, you know. The minstrels and the gallery. Ian Anderson, right? He hasn't got the voice like that anymore, but he can still sing. He just doesn't have that range anymore. But he's fantastic. I love his vocals. I initially never liked this band because of the song Aqualung, which came out, and I just thought, if all their songs sound like that, I don't want to listen to it. But then I eventually started listening to some of their stuff around the time my daughter was born. I realized, wow, they got a lot of really good music, and his voice is fantastic on a lot of these songs. He just has a range that I think is really good, and he writes all of his own stuff, produces all the own music. Like, he's another one of these guys that's everything to the band, right? So now we get on to my number 5, who is a bit of a maybe controversial person on this list. I don't like that type of music in general, but I love this person's first 3 albums. They got some folkiness to them, some kind of, I don't even know what you would call it, but the voice is, to me, perfect. She's the perfect voice. I love her voice so much. But you know, she's not part of mainstream rock. I think she's more of a pop singer, and you know, maybe fits in with Madonna and that more than she fits in here. But I'm putting her in here because I love her, and we're talking about Robin Fenty, or Rihanna, as you all know. Great singer, and you know, if you think she doesn't fit into here, you can tell me in that. But I just love her too much. I had to put her I had to put her on my list. She had to be on there. Okay, number 4 is another Kiss singer. I think he deserves to be on here. And initially, he wasn't my favorite singer in the band, but every time I listened to the stuff, once I started getting older, I really loved the kind of Wilson Pickett sound to his voice, the kind of heavy blues influence and jazzy influence voice to his, and we're talking about Peter Criss. I think he has the best voice in the band. Could have been a superstar, I think. No doubt in my mind, if he had stuck to the rock music that he was playing with Kiss and continued on his solo career doing that type of music, I have no doubt he would have been a superstar. But he had it in his mind, he didn't want to sing that. He wanted to sing something else, you know. And it's not that he's bad at that other stuff, but it just wasn't going to put him on the map. So, anyways, that we're talking about Peter Criss, of course. So number 4, Peter Criss. Number 3, back to Styx again, but this time, you know, as much as I love Tommy Shaw and J.Y. and Lawrence Gowen's voice, nobody has a voice like Dennis DeYoung. Nobody. Probably my favorite shower singer of all time. I love to sing the stuff that he sings, and most of my favorite Styx songs are of his voice. The only problem with Dennis DeYoung, I think, is he loves those ballads, and unfortunately for him, that just didn't work for the rest of the band, and it didn't really work for him either. But you know, I still think he has the tremendous voice at his age. He's also a great front man, very outgoing, good keyboard player, good music writer, good lyricist, like another guy, another front man that can do everything, right? Great guy. Okay, the number 2 has switched with Dennis DeYoung a few times, or they move around a bit, but another great vocalist with tremendous range. Maybe the only person on this list who has the kind of range that Freddie Mercury has. I think she has the range myself. I think she's the greatest female singer of all time. She has tremendous range. She can belt it out. There's power there. And she sings some really good songs. And we're talking about Ann Wilson of Heart. That 80s stuff aside, the stuff she put out in the 70s was fantastic. That bluesy kind of folky, acoustic guitar, some heavy guitar stuff. She could do it all, and she still can. She's just a tremendous vocalist, I think, and deserves to be where she is, which is number 2 for me. Number 1 was never in doubt when I put the list together. That person was going to be right at the top. There's not anybody really even close, and there never has been since I first heard him. Once he became my favorite singer, nobody's come close to touching him. Not even Ann Wilson or Dennis DeYoung, who flip around sometimes, in my opinion, and some of these other guys move around over time as well. But nobody can take the spot of Ronnie James Dio. I think he has good range. He's operatic almost in his singing. He can belt out that heavy metal stuff really well. He can also sing the more quieter songs very well. He just has a really memorable voice. And I think one of the things that I didn't say much about vocalists on this, which I think suits him the best, is that he can sing. He's sang on a lot of really, really great rock songs. You know, you go back to Rainbow Stargazer, Tarot Woman, Night in the Black, on Black Sabbath's Neon Nights, Children of the Sea, Country Girl. You know, you go down the list, and even Unholy Diver on his own stuff. So he sang some of among my very favorite rock songs, and he's done them all well. That Stargazer, that voice, when he does that singing in that song, just brings tears to my eyes. It's so angelic. And I just really like him as a person as well. And it's really sad that he's gone. It's unfortunate. I think he's actually the only one on my list here. Yeah, he's the only one on my list that's gone, that no longer is alive. And it's just unfortunate, because I just think he had so much more to give, you know. Anyways, there you go. My top 25 vocalists of all time. I'll do them in the order that I have them, and then I'll give you the honorable mentions. So Ronnie James Dio is number 1, Ann Wilson of Heart, number 2, Dennis DeYoung, formerly of Styx, number 3, Peter Criss, formerly of Kiss, number 4, Rihanna, or Robin Fenty if you prefer, Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, Rick Emmett of Triumph, David Lee Roth of Van Halen and his solo stuff as well, Peter Gabriel of his solo stuff and Genesis, Tommy Shaw of Styx as well, Ian Gillen of Deep Purple and One Black Sabbath, John Anderson of Yes and some of his solo stuff as well. And I think he's done that Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman and Howe album was very good as well. And that should be a Yes album by my standards. Neil Young, whose voice I love in all of its forms, even with all the people he's been with. Roger Daltrey of The Who, of course. Bon Scott of AC/DC. Number 16, Gil Moore of Triumph. Number 17, Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden. Number 18, Chrissy Hind of The Pretenders. Number 19, there's the other guy. I knew there was one more. The late, great Phil Lynott of Thin Lizzy. Another great guy who went far before his time. Phil Collins of Genesis and solo stuff as well. Lawrence Gowen of solo stuff and Styx. Freddie Mercury of Queen. Robin Zander of Cheap Trick. Paul Stanley of Kiss. And C.F. Turner of BTO. Now, for my honorable mention, I'm just going to move a little bit here. So, for my honorable... Oh, shit, I forgot that was there. Just got water on my foot. So, of honorable mentions, Rob Halford, Judas Priest. I like Miley Cyrus. My daughter's a big fan of hers, so I've heard almost all of her stuff, and I really like some of it quite a bit. I know it's a bit poppy. The first album is very good. If you want to try out Miley Cyrus, there's your way. Stevie Nicks, of course, angelic voice. I love her voice. J.Y., the other member of Styx, of course. Geddy Lee of Rush. Now, I know people have mixed feelings about Geddy Lee. I like his voice myself. I don't think he's one of my favorite vocalists, but I love his voice for the music that they do. Don Henley of the Eagles, of course. Greg Lake, King Crimson and ELP. Elton John. Early on, Elton John just had one hit after another, and he had one hit after another his whole career, but I really like his early stuff quite a bit, and I like his voice. David Bowie has a very unusual voice, and I've always liked it. Robert Plant, how can you not have, the singer for Led Zeppelin, and his solo stuff is pretty good too. He's got a really good voice. Brian Johnson, the other AC/DC singer, the guy on the big album, and to come in under those circumstances and take over, that guy gets 100% kudos from me. Christine McVie, the other singer from, the other female singer anyways, from Fleetwood Mac. I like Christine McVie a lot. And of course, Ace Frehley, antics aside, I like his voice because he has my favorite, or one of my two favorite Kiss albums, which is his first solo, which is under the Kiss label. A fantastic album. Anyways, there you have it. My honorable mentions, my top 25 vocalists. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. I loved making it. It was fantastic to review all my great singers here. If you liked it, like and subscribe, and give me your list. Tell me your comments. Who do you really like? Is there somebody here you don't like? But just remember, these are my favorites, and give me your list and let me hear your favorites. Let's just keep these guys alive because they deserve the attention. Thank you very much. This is Prog Monster signing off. You have a great day. Bye.